Are we looking great? Are we, you know?
I'm in my PJs.
Well, that's great. It's as my grandma said, it's never an excuse not to look good. So just for all of you, you should know we make an enormous effort to just look a little bit reasonable. So you guys, if you're ever going to watch our faces, it could be more than a pleasure. But now Pernilla just said that she's in her pajamas, and but she put a nice t-shirt on or sweater on, looks very nice. And I just came up from the water. I've been swimming. It's 16 degrees. Very nice.
Oh shit! How much is that in Fahrenheit? I don't know.
Oh, I don't know in Fahrenheit. But you know, you can be. You know, we Scandinavians, we can be there. So let's get started.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
What are we talking about?
Well, we're going to keep on talking about surrender. That's our theme for the month,
favorite subject.
Yeah. So,
it's
and
my
your favorite subject. So, first of all, welcome to everybody who's joining us. Welcome to new followers and to the old followers. Really appreciate that you're taking your time and tapping into a moment of awareness and to our podcast, the awareness process of the awakening 101. So, Pernilla.
What did you call our podcast?
I really didn't know, but you know, awareness. I did.
Awakening process 101.
Yeah, the awakening. Actually, I said the awareness. Yeah, I just got
clearly slap happy today.
It's slap happy, really, and I just get an SMS on my computer from Holly writing from school that school sucks and they are stupid.
School sucks.
School sucks. So yes, we have already had 2 or almost 3 podcasts about the topic of surrender, and we're gonna keep on talking about this enormous theme and quality of life of surrender. And just to maybe do a little recap of where we ended from the last episode, we really talked about the process of surrender and how that is growing, and you came with some examples, big and small, and how we could becoming more aware of these small moments of when we surrender and what the benefits and what it feels like when we actually do surrender, right?
You know, to be honest, I have no idea what we talked about.
Okay, I love that because she surrendered so much, so she always forget about it. I think that maybe we should start there.
When is was Monday? Was Monday? What? Tell me what we talked about? No, the 24-hour rule was
that was the 2 episodes. Yeah, that was 2 episodes ago. No, the last one we talked about the anger letter that your therapist, and we also talked about to get distracted, so getting yourself out of it.
Yes.
And we also talked about how does it feel like when you do surrender, the impact of it. And we also talked a little bit about David Hopkins, right, from his book Letting Go.
David Hopkins, yeah.
And
we read some quotes. Okay, now I'm with you. I remember now.
Yeah, but let's start here today. What is the difference of surrender and just, because surrender is an action, letting go is an action, but when I just say, okay, I don't care, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's easy. Oh, I just surrender, and then you don't do, you don't take any responsibility, you just don't really care.
Well, I mean, it's the difference between surrender and like fuck it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, but it's a very good question, because most of us, at least for me, it took me a really long time to understand that there was something different than just saying screw this, forget about this. But it is when you surrender, you let go of something, and it is associated with a feeling of peace and lightness. So the thing that you're worrying about or the thing that you're angry about once it's surrendered, that fear and anger is also gone. And if you really surrendered, like full-blown surrender, then that fear and that anger about that thing will never come back again, because the underlying feelings are gone. So that is the one side. So
just take that one more time. Like, when I surrender, these feelings will disappear.
well, yeah, so that is the ultimate journey, right? Like, okay, let me try to find an example. Okay, so I called a friend last week.
Mm-hmm.
I left a message about something that I knew would probably be upsetting
Yeah.
for her. And we've had some issues in the past, so I'm always a little worried when if I have to tell her something. Like, she's a very, very close friend of mine, so I get a little nervous. So I left a message, and for about, a day or so, I was like waiting for her to call me back and checking my messages, and then the days went by and I forgot about it.
Yeah.
And I had a moment when I realized that, like, we are such good friends that even if I did upset her and she was upset, we would mend it because we're such good friends. So then I
Okay.
completely forgot about it. And then she called me.
She called you.
Right. So, yeah. And then she called me and didn't even really address the fact that this thing that I couldn't do, she was like, hey, how are you? So what happened was that I got to a point within me where I had surrendered that whatever would happen would be okay. So that's what I'm talking about, right? When you get to a place where the negative feelings within you have sort of been resolved because you are not doing anything about it, right? You let them
Yeah.
have their
Yeah.
life. Like, this situation especially has been something that I sort of worry about here and there for year to year. And then I spent, like maybe a day or two sitting with the feeling, trying not to like do things like call and text and check, because that's sort of the fixing part, right? Like, if I try to look into if she, if this scenario is like this, then blah blah blah. So instead, I often ask myself this. So what is what is the worst thing that could happen? I mean, David Hawkins has this in his book too. And then I have a solution. Okay, so what's the worst thing that could happen? Okay, she will be upset with me. Can I surrender to that? Can I be okay with the fact that she will be upset? Yes. Right? Yes, I can be
If you
okay.
can't, like, if you feel like, oh, I actually can't be okay that she would be upset with me, then you're holding on to
Then
it.
you can No, then you can surrender to that.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not okay.
Mm.
And then from that, I think I feel like I've worked a lot with trying to understand my child self. So the sort of the little Pernilla, sounds so cheesy, but
What
so
people
if
should
I
call the inner
cannot,
child, right?
yeah, yeah. So it's like, if I'm not okay with her being upset, then that's the fear of the small child within me that's still there. And then I want to surrender to that and nurture that. It's okay to be scared and as a small child. So you have a question. I see it in your face.
No, but no, I just want to hold on to it, because I think that, I know now you said, oh, it's cheesy to the little Pernilla, but I don't think it's cheesy, because I think that, the inner child is very important to,
Very.
and I think we should, that's why I wanted to ask you, how would you, for someone who's new to that, how would you describe the inner child? What is the inner child?
Wait, are we skipping around?
not at
Oh,
all. But
no,
I
no,
just
no.
want to,
Okay.
not at all,
So,
because
so
I
I
think you're
think
taking surrender to, you're going for surrender
next level.
to that feeling.
Yeah.
You're going to a deeper, because you're actually going to the root of where
Yeah.
it's coming
So
from.
exactly, because the root is often it is the small inner child
Mm,
that is the one that is fearful.
mm,
I mean, a lot of our resentment and anxieties come from the things that are stuck with us since we were 7.
mm,
For me, was like a deep feeling that things wouldn't work out.
mm,
And I don't know where that comes from. But just a sort of like, I didn't have a sort of a nurturing belief that things were going to
mm.
be okay for whatever reason. We could be the cultural, the
Yeah,
generations, everything
yeah,
that we've talked
yeah.
about. So I think being able to understand that this is where things come from is a huge step in the evolution of this process.
Mm,
Because once you see that, then you can have empathy. So, and I had I'll tell a story. So remember that year when we moved to Sweden
mm,
and, my dad was sick and, we decided last minute to, to move to Sweden for a year and sort of be with him. And it was the most stressful year of my life. I don't know why. I've had many worse things than a move happen, but it just was everything from the very beginning was a complete disaster. And I sort of was upset with myself because I thought, I've been meditating for years and I'm so evolved spiritually, and why am I feeling like this? And I should be better than this. And, I had sort of this
Was
like
this when
high
you were in
bar.
Sweden? Like, was this when you were
Yeah, I
aware
had
of
arrived.
this?
I was, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had this
But
sort
this
of,
was not that you came back home a year later and you
no, this was
realized, no.
happening while I was there.
Okay. Okay.
And I remember I spoke to a teacher that I had met the summer before. His name is Patrick Connor. He runs the Shambhala Foundation. And this is another good story. So I used to take my kids to this ashram in upstate New York, Shivananda ashram, for like yoga camp for a week during the summer when they were little. It's very like, it's a children's camp and they run around and we do like, they do yoga and games and it's just a beautiful place. But one day I had just come back. This is like the summer of 2016. I had just come back from Sweden and it was a difficult summer. And all of a sudden we're sitting there eating. It's a community. So there's a person sitting next to me. And I start talking to him and I start talking about that I've been to Sweden and it's difficult for me and I don't understand really why. And he says, well, it's because it's the karma from your high school age that you're still living through. You're
Mm,
still understanding that karma that you had from high school. And that's why this happens every time because you're reminded about that
mm,
karma. And I was like, oh my God. Like that was like in that moment, I was like, oh, now I get it.
yeah.
Like why I worry about like this type of thing when I'm in
Mm,
Sweden, not when I'm here. And that he happened to sit next to me. His name is Patrick Connor, and he's a big spiritual teacher. He was living there at the time. Of course, he just sat down next to me. So cut to, we were in Sweden. This is 6 months later. And I scheduled a call with him during the first few months because I was losing it. It was just awful. I had
mm,
that car accident in the first week, and the cops like
mm,
had thought that I was at fault. So I had to come in for an interview to see my part in it. And it was like, you could get prosecuted. It was just like a complete shit show. And I was like, why am I feeling so bad? So anyway, I spoke to him and I remember what he said was, you're hitting a glass ceiling because you cannot accept your own
mm, mm,
human condition. You think that somehow, because you know all this spiritual wisdom, that you're not
This is
human. And I was like, oh my God, And that's when I started understanding and working on the fact that there is this inner child that is fearful and doesn't always believe in that things are going to be okay. And she needs to be taken care of too. And so when I started seeing that other aspect of myself, it helps in the journey of surrender, because sometimes it is not definable what it is. So when you have fear or upset or something like that, it usually comes from a very long time ago and something that was ingrained in you, and that's why you don't know. So if you can see that little person and treat that person with empathy and love, and give them what they need as you would your own children, then it sort of opens up another pathway to healing. And just one more story.
Yeah, before you tap into that story, I just
Yeah.
wanted to say there is a book that I read called Homecoming from John Bradshaw. I think you pronounce it like that. But Homecoming from John Bradshaw, who writes about the inner child. And it's
Yeah, that's amazing.
amazing. It's so easy to read, and he will tap into the fearful inner child, to the abandoned inner child, to, it's,
Yeah.
and when you read it, it's like, oh my God, you understand, you're becoming so much more kind to yourself, or you understand. And I think it takes away this little cheesiness, you know what I mean? That
Yeah.
maybe you can just call the inner child the pain that you have without knowing where it comes from.
Yeah. It's not that the inner child is a pain. It's the pain that the inner
Yeah.
child has.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, so I'll tell the story quickly and then
Mhm.
we return back.
No, not
But
quickly.
I had when I had about 5 years, I talked about this before on the podcast, but I had about 5 years sober, and I had severe depression. I mean, severe, like in the
Mm,
corner, hysterically
mm,
crawling into a ball, hysterically crying for hours on end. And I had just broken up with this English guy that I've talked about before, where it was 2 months, and it was a terrible relationship. Not abusive or anything, but just we were completely mismatched and everything. But he broke up with me, and I was completely thrown. My whole world was like, it was is it sort of like a codependency bottom as well as a emotional bottom, depression wise. So I started seeing this therapist in LA, and she was an older lady, which was great because I felt very nurtured by her. And in the beginning, I went for two days a week, and I literally sat and sobbed hysterically for the whole hour. And then I went back, and then I sobbed for another whole hour. And this was what I needed, because in early sobriety, I didn't cry at all. A lot of people come into the program and they're just sitting in a corner crying,
yeah. Yeah.
which is basically what you should be doing, because
Mm,
there's so much pain. But
mm,
I was so blocked that I never
mm,
got to do that. It wasn't until I had my sort of codependency relationship bottom that I sort of bust through the barrier and started
mm,
crying. But she said that was something so profound, was that you have to spend time nurturing yourself
mm,
just as you would your own child.
mm.
Because I had never taken care of myself. I mean, I drank and did
No.
drugs for like 12, 13 years. And,
Mm,
I treated my body like a complete
mm,
toilet. And even 5 years in, I think that, I had 2 gallons of coffee,
mm,
a bagel, I just ate, I ate poorly. I just didn't have any sort of, just the idea of nurturing myself as I would my own child
mm,
started this process of understanding that there's something in here that needs to be taken care of,
mm,
and that never was, um, from my own perspective. I just never even thought about that before.
mm,
Oh, I have to take care of myself.
mm.
What? So the surrender practice is understanding where it comes from and being okay with that and surrendering to that. Sometimes we can surrender to the pain and the fear, and it can stay with us. But having a moment where we can understand the pain and the fear from that younger person's perspective is also an avenue in releasing it. Okay, I have this fear because I was fearful of this when I was a little girl. Now I see it, I feel it, and it can be released with time if you see it and have an awareness on it.
I'm so with you. I think it's no, but I think I mean, I could just feel like when you talk about the inner child and when you're talking about the surrender process, I'm actually getting a little bit moved.
Moved?
Yeah, I got touched. I can feel that there's something within me that that I can I get
You're
sensitive.
triggered.
No, not triggered. I would
Yeah.
not say triggered because it's not provocative in that way. And the other way, I think it's
No, it doesn't have to be a negative thing. That's something in you like got touched
I
in
mean,
the.
I got touched. I think because it's a different thing when things get triggered. I need to more work on it, and when things get touched, it's to be more. Maybe
Aware
I'm
of it.
vulnerable by being more kind to myself. To say, okay, here's a little gift. It's a little treasure there. Let's nurture it. Let's be even more kind, self-compassion. So I think it's very interesting. I'm thinking of the process of surrender when you said, to understand where this comes from. Maybe I'm not available. Maybe I'm not in that point that I can, or in that condition to be able to understand where it comes from. But just being in that state, and maybe the question where it comes from is also the way of surrender and the healing path of just letting go, right?
Yeah. Because sometimes not understanding where it comes from is also a part of the surrender. Because you can feel feelings without knowing where, quote, they were originated or where they come from. So, for example, like, if you say like, these are this is sort of a process. So, you surrender to the anger about something. And then you just know that it's anger. And then you sort of work with that for a time. And then maybe at some point you go, oh, it's anger because of this. And that can take years. I mean, that it doesn't happen overnight. This is a process,
And that's why we need to come back to always be patient, because things take time, right?
Yeah.
And
things take
also
time.
things takes time, but also have this blind faith in our own process, knowing that it's like I heard this story about the butterfly, when it's in the little shelf, or what we call it, it takes that time to grow and to come out and then be able to fly, that we can't force that process. And I think that that's a lot of things within us that we can't force. We can do our work, we can study, we can meditate, we can nurture ourselves, but it's really to have that faith that in our own body, in our own lives, that things, as long as I do the things that's good for me, it would be okay. But it doesn't maybe come the quick fix when I want it.
When you say blind faith in doing and keeping on doing the things that are good for us, right? those are still very, in my opinion,
Mm.
advanced things to do. Because I don't think that I had blind faith or took good care of myself for a really, 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 really long time until
But
there was a switch. So I feel like
yeah,
this process can begin before we have a blind faith.
but I think that's very individual, because I was so much in despair when I got into recovery that I needed to have blind faith. Like even in the first 3 steps, I had no idea what I was surrendered to, or what was I were handing my life over to. I was so in desperate need. So when I said the blind faith for me was if there was an unconscious helpness of the universe or whatever, or if it's the, in the stone in the garden. But for me, it was a determination to have the blind faith. I had
Yeah.
no other choice. So then I would say, even me also, when I looked 7 years into recovery, when I saw my relationships that I had, that's the reason why I started to chant and I became the Buddhist. Because in recovery, I could still see that I had no good way of managing myself. I was still destructive. I was still doing so many things, even though I was sober and I was doing the steps, I was doing things that was not good to me. Like back to,
Yeah.
being kind to yourself.
Yeah.
So for me, when I can see that I taking the blind faith process, it's a commitment and determination that I can take every day or in different periods of my life over and over again. So something
Yeah.
that I'm so I think that it's very individual, but for me,
Yeah. It's very individual.
for me it was that, okay, just take it, whatever there is, just take it. I need to have, I need to just have faith in something and
Yeah.
trust it. And that's
Yeah.
what I
But what
mean
I'm,
with a blind faith for me. Um, I wouldn't say that my blind faith in early recovery or for the first day in recovery was with awareness. That was in despair.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
there
I mean,
was,
I guess if you want to define exactly what blind faith means, I mean, I guess it means that I kept going to meetings even though I had
yeah,
no idea that it worked, or
yeah,
you know, you keep going to therapy because you don't really know, but you just go anyway. I mean, I guess that's what you mean by
yeah,
blind
yeah,
faith. Like
yeah,
you
yeah,
keep trying to change something,
yeah,
uh, or do something to shift where you're coming from.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with recovery is that we come we take away drugs and alcohol, and then you're left with the other shit. Relationships,
Yourself.
negative negative thinking about oneself, self-hatred. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just endless, right? Codependency. I mean, all of the things that were broken underneath it is what comes out in the
Mm.
first few years of recovery, and that is, it's tough.
So
It's
much
tough.
more pain. Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to be newly sober again.
No,
It
neither
was
would
really
I.
hard. Yeah, it was really, really hard the first few years. But again, it's sort of in your soul that you know that this is the best thing for you. So you
Mm.
keep at it. And
Mm.
that's, I guess, what you mean by blind faith.
Yeah.
Yeah. You keep going.
But there must be, I mean, I'm just thinking now, this is just, a thought passing by, but because, you meet many people in recovery and especially when you're new into recovery and people are relapsing and some people don't make it. I have lost some friends who were in recovery, but they couldn't stand the pain. It was just too
Yeah.
hard. But so it must be, and I'm just thinking, oh, it must be that force that we had that just made us go through it. Because I mean, we weren't carried on a silver plate through this. I mean, we did the work, like all. I mean,
Yeah.
all recovering people, I truly believe we'd all do the work, but just, and maybe that's just our karma, that some
Yeah.
people,
I don't, yeah. And I don't think that there's any equation that can
no,
tell you what it
no,
is that makes people Some
No.
some stay sober and some don't.
Yeah.
There's just no rhyme or reason. It's all, and it's coincidences and
Mm.
timing and people that you meet and a good sponsor, a bad sponsor. I mean,
Mhm.
there's no rhyme or reason. It's a very, very hard process.
But we can make it.
Of course, yeah.
Mm.
Keep at
One
it.
day, one day at a time.
1 hour at a time, my friend.
I know. 1 minute sometimes. Oh
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
But I have
All
to
right.
say, back to the surrender process and what you have shared today, I just sitting with an emotion or feeling of extremely freedom and space.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really
From
nice.
understanding this inner child, or what is it that's making you feel that way?
No, but I think that I worked a lot with inner child in my therapy, and I'm still working on it, and I'm very fascinated about it. And I was also like, if you asked me 5 years ago, and you were tapping into the inner child, it's like, oh, don't go there, you know.
Yeah.
So it's quite recently new for me. I only done it for maybe 3 years working with it, but I can just feel that there is a hope and that space and that freedom that I can feel of constantly surrender and not just being passive and saying, okay, I don't care. It turns
Hmm.
out however it turns out. But I think what you told and what you shared, I hope that people who are listening maybe also will sit with the same space as I have, because I can feel I have a, I have a calm, I have a pink aura around my heart right
Yeah.
now. That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if we've touched on this before, but I'm gonna actually hold on 1 second. I'm gonna see if I can find this. There's a part in this blog that I wrote about surrender that I think that we should. I'm just gonna read it.
Mm,
Okay. So it just talks about the actual processing of the feelings.
wonderful.
Doctor, this is quote from my blog, The Surrender. Dr. Hawkins explains that in order for true surrender to happen, one has to recognize our own emotions fully, and we have to let our feelings live their life and
Mm,
have their process. When a negative feeling arises, we have to consciously allow the feeling to surface and be acknowledged.
mm,
The tricky thing here is to just observe those feelings without trying to fix or act or discuss them in any way. It is key to let the feelings be, let them live their lifespan, and live out the needed process. The most important thing in this practice is that if something bothers you and triggers you, let it be.
mm,
So the one word that I got caught on here is this word allow.
mm,
Give permission,
mm,
allow.
mm,
I think about that a lot throughout the day when, for example, my kids are having an upset or something emotional happening. I'll
mm,
often say that word to myself,
mm,
allow,
mm,
allow for this,
mm,
which is basically another way of saying surrender.
mm,
Because we often cause resistance in response to other people's upset,
mm,
right? I'm not just talking about surrendering my own feelings. How do we surrender the feelings of the people we live with?
mm,
Surrender our response to them. So
mm,
allowing for that, it's a good reminder word, allow.
mm.
Um,
It's
Giving
kindness in that
permission
word.
to them, because it's like, I think about this a lot in parenting, because if I allow for their feelings to have
Mm,
life, they're going to learn how to allow themselves to have those feelings later.
Mm.
I mean, and again, it's not a perfect. I mean, I'm sure my kids will
No,
be in
no,
therapy.
but I think, of
Oh my
course,
God, she was a crazy person. But because and then that's the same thing for myself. So I allow myself to feel this way,
Mhm.
but I'm going to let it be. So that is my tidbit.
I think that's a very nice ending. I allow myself to feel this way.
Yeah.
So
But
are
because
we
it's
gonna?
like we just always, as human beings, we always want to change how we feel when we feel
Mhm.
something bad.
I
Um,
know.
and yes, like we talked about last time, yes, that is fine when something is unbearable. Do something else,
Mm.
for sure. When something is so unbearable that you can't even, you're just having like a horrible something happen that's horrible, do something else, distract yourself. But with the
It,
little things which we can begin with,
yeah, we can allow.
if somebody says something mean at work,
Mm.
or your husband sounds grumpy and you get triggered
Mm.
by that, or your child is like crying about something like, you know,
I,
homework, for example, and you're just like,
yeah,
homework? No one cares. We're 52 now and no one cares about a bad
we don't
test,
care.
So
But listen, this is so
that's when you
because
can
when you,
practice.
I know, but I think we need to have another podcast because when you talk about this, I just get really, no, but I just got emotionally flashback to when I broke up with Magnus, the hairdresser in Sweden. And I was not, there was such a destructive relationship, and I was not able to break up. And he broke up with me. And I remember when he did that, I just thanked the universe for doing the things I can't do for myself. But the
Yeah.
pain I had for over 6 months, 8 months afterwards, and I got so fascinating because I was in recovery, in that time. I got so fascinating that our emotions that we can't touch, that we can't, that we can't hang up on a hanger, that we can't just, open the door and put them out. It's just so interesting to see that the only way to having them pass is exactly what you have written in your blog and what David Hawkins is saying in his book. But how the human we are just creating in such a fascinating way that this is what we have.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
this is what makes
I
people
think,
completely, that's why we do drugs. That's why we can't, because we can't cope with our feelings.
no, no. And I
If
think that it's lovely that you think it's fascinating right now,
I think it
but it's
is
fascinating 15 years ago or 23 years ago when I got sober.
absolutely not. Absolutely. But also it's fascinating that we have vocals that we can speak, that we can, it's a fascination of how, I mean, yeah, we can, I am fascinated about the human being.
Yeah. But I mean, I just had this thought that like, even though and now I'm really going off in a tangent, but even though we don't have words, like I think about my horse that I've had for 17 years,
Mm,
and he's healed his trauma too
mm,
through having the environment that he has, which is
mm,
loving and routines, and the same
mm,
thing happens every day, and he doesn't expect anything unexpected. I come and I give him love, and I take care of him it's the same thing
mm,
every day.
mm.
And he used to not be able to be, at the barn, there's something called cross ties, is like these ropes that are connected to the side of their halter.
Yeah.
And I used to not be able to put them on him because he would flip out.
Interesting.
He would feel the tension in the halter
Mm.
and the pressure from the halter in his head. And he would, stand up on his back legs and break the cross ties, right? And yesterday, I put him in what we call a wash stall where we can like shower them, because I gave
Mm,
him a
mm.
bath night. And he hung out on those cross ties for like an hour and a half, just looking at
You're
me coming
kidding.
and going and watching him and drying him off with a towel. and he's 23 now. I've had him since he was 6, but he's gone through a healing process too.
Mm.
But there are no words. It is the environment that he is in, and the energy that supported him that has healed him too. Which is also very, I mean, we could talk about this another time.
Yeah, we need,
but
we
it doesn't have to be just the verbal communication. I believe a lot in nurturing
of
environments.
course,
And,
definitely. Of course, I'm so with you.
yeah. We can heal from a
But
lot
we
of
can,
different
we can
aspects.
heal from, we can heal from, I mean, we can talk about, I told you I did this Reiki healing course, and I, just tremendously changed since, we can all, we can really
Yeah.
direct our energy to ourselves and to the people that are in need for that, and the animals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we need to
There's
wrap
not
up,
just
honey.
one way. Yeah. See you later, my friend.
See you later, alligator. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Namaste.
this was great.
Thank you so
We'll
much.
see you soon anyway.
Very soon, and soon we're going to sit next to each other.
Yeah.
I love it. Love
Thank you for
honey.
listening, everybody. This is an amazing, incredible journey for us to be here with you, and we love you all. So, thanks.
Love and light.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Thank you.